Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Transfer Talks here on the channel. It's been quite a while, so we thought here on the rest day it would be a perfect opportunity. And as always, I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. Greg himself, Mr. Ewan Wilson. And Ewan, we've got plenty of things to discuss, but I think the big headline here is Mark Cavendish not being renewed by QuickStep Alpecin.
Exactly that. And this headline has been brewing for a while. As I'm sure viewers are aware, Mark Cavendish was not selected for the Tour de France team. They decided to opt for Fabio Jakobsen instead. For the sprints, Cavendish recently won the British Championships. He was left without any communication that he was going to either be put on or be struck off of their Tour de France team for QuickStep Alpha Vinyl. Eventually, he didn't make the cut. This has sort of fueled the fire. He's been a bit sassy in Instagram comments recently and so forth. And his future seemed uncertain, especially given that he was only granted a one-year contract at the end of last year. This year, however, it looks like this partnership is going to end. On the rest day after stage 9 on the Tour de France, Patrick Lefevre and QuickStep did this big, strange press announcement where they launched the jersey and the team identity for the next year. Being from the 2023 season onwards, they launched their jersey, and Patrick Lefevre answered some key questions from the world's press, which, of course, included Mark Cavendish. And he said that Mark Cavendish is not going to be a part of the vision of the Soudal-QuickStep project for the years to come. Also saying that Mark Cavendish's request of having a 2-year contract extension would not be granted at Soudal-QuickStep, as they will be known next year. This sparked big speculation. For about a week, it was left a little bit unknown, but we have some solid rumors now. EF Education First in Velo News, courtesy of Daniel Benson, the editor, has declared that they do have interest in signing Mark Cavendish and have been put in contact with his agent. Similarly, Ineos Grenadiers are interested in signing Mark Cavendish, as is Israel Premier Tech, which has been reported by a number of outlets. So this is a very interesting lead for Mark Cavendish, who has 3 options on the table from EF, Ineos, and Israel.
Yeah, we've spoken about Mark Cavendish before, like when it looked like after that Wevelgem race where he was so emotional, he thought it was his last ever race. We kind of speculated, was he going to go to a lesser team, a continental team, and with his profile, he would get them into bigger races effectively. But QuickStep saved him last minute. He did what he did at the Tour de France last year, which was absolutely amazing. He got his chance at the Giro d'Italia this year, got that one stage, but we were hoping for more. It was a bit weird not seeing the defending green jersey kind of defend his green jersey when he was fit, as he said it himself. And it seemed like such a great publicity stunt. We've spoken about that so many times that you could bring him to the Tour. You didn't have to work for him all the stages, just get him over that Eddie Merckx line. But yeah, Ewan, out of the 3, that's of course where we're going to go next. Ineos, EF Education, and Israel's Premier Tech. Which do you kind of think he fits in best? Ineos signed Elia Viviani, a previous sprinter, already back to their team. So Israel, we've spoken about them being somewhat a pensioner club in a way. So who do you kind of think they fit into?
It's difficult. None of these 3 teams are on paper sprinting projects. EF don't have a sort of headline sprinter. They haven't had a big sprint train since about 2012 with Tyler Farrar, dare I say. Looking at Israel, how many sprint stages did Israel win? It's not many. Similarly, Ineos Grenadiers, yes, Viviani moved over. That's also because of the personal relationship Viviani has with the team, which is similar to Mark Cavendish, to be fair. I think Ineos and Cavendish make sense on paper. British team, British rider, wanting to push the home talent. And it's going to be great for headlines. Ineos probably have the budget for Cavendish. By the sounds of it, he's being quite demanding in terms of the 2-year contract that he wanted an extension with Soudal-QuickStep for, that he couldn't be granted. That's going to be a big investment for a team to do that. Ineos certainly have the purse strings to do so, even if they have said that they're trying to strip down their budget a little bit for the next year. On the other hand, we have Israel Premier Tech, which, I mean, billionaire owner. They forked out for many a professional. Cavendish would fit in there. I don't quite think he'd get the results, though, at Israel Premier Tech. But these are 3 meh options. I don't think any of them are really going to grant him a big Tour de France victory. But at the same time, he's getting on. He wants a 2-year contract. There probably aren't that many teams that could feasibly offer that.
Yeah, it's exactly like you say. He is 37 years old. It's not particularly young in the sprinting game. So yeah, maybe he's being a bit too, I don't know, like, but there isn't that incredible lead out train that we've seen at QuickStep Alpha Vinyl for so many years. So it might be quite hard with some of these lesser sprinting teams. But anyway, moving on, going to Jumbo Visma now. And this happened quite a while ago, but they've somewhat confirmed the signings of both Jan Tratnik and Dylan van Baarle. And Ewan, these are two incredible classics riders this year, definitely. Is this Jumbo Visma bolstering their classic side for potentially Wout van Aert, or are they looking in their own right for the chances of Jan Tratnik and Dylan van Baarle?
These two riders are, yeah, they're good classics riders, but they're also super versatile, great Grand Tour anchors. Jan Tratnik, strong time trial rider, he's got good experience. He's also pretty strong in the hills, could be one of these guys that could work on the front of sort of a GC Jonas Vingegaard team early on in the stage. And I could certainly see that for him. Similarly for Dylan van Baarle, in the Cobble Classics, could certainly be in support of Wout van Aert. But also in terms of the Grand Tours, we've seen him in the past couple of years be a staple of Ineos Grenadiers' Tour de France lineup. He's had the chance to chase his own opportunities at Ineos. I think at Jumbo, he might be given a similar sort of reign, similar style to do what he wants. Also, maybe at Ineos, he's worried that their new cobble generation is coming through and threatening him. But he proved the Paris-Roubaix that he can still win on the highest stage possible. Also, looking towards Jumbo-Visma, they've also made an awful lot of renewals as well to keep this GC and Classics team going. Tiesj Benoot and Nathan van Hooijdonk have signed on for an extra couple of years as well. So this is sort of a long-term project for the team, probably to keep them at the highest level possible for a long time. Tratnik and Dylan van Baarle fit right in. Tratnik, they'll be their second Slovenian rider, and Dylan van Baarle as a Dutch native going back to a Dutch team. It makes an awful lot of sense.
Right, next we have a transfer of a rider who is actually at the Tour de France and is quite interesting, the Swiss rider Stefan Küng. And Ewan, he's been reported by L'Equipe that he wants to leave the team. And yeah, what's the story here? He's such a former European time trial champion. And yeah, what's going on?
Well, reigning European time trial champion,
King
Küng, who's had a fabulous Spring Classics campaign this year, third place at Roubaix being one of his big achievements, finishing top 10 in many different classic profiles. A super, super strong rider, but he hasn't quite been seeming his jovial self in this Tour de France. He got COVID beforehand after having such good form. He's been outspoken about the Bahrain Victoria scandals, but in terms of this contract debacle, he said in L'Equipe that he wants to leave the team. He wants to leave Groupama Française des Jeux, even though he has a contract until the end of 2023. It's not quite gone down so well with the team. Marc Madiot says that the team wants to keep Stefan Küng for next year. Yes, there is a clause for him to leave, but he is saying that Küng will be on the team next year and that everything is being said in the press is totally false. Those are his words. So it's an interesting one. Küng wants to leave, openly said he wants to leave. Marc Madiot saying he shouldn't leave, but there is a clause to say that he can leave. So I'm a little bit confused by this one, but I'm going to believe Stefan Küng that he does want to part ways with the Groupama project, even though it's been successful up until this point.
I mean, what better to do than speculate where should Stefan Küng actually go? This very strong time trial list, very strong cobble rider. And yeah, I think many teams would want the services of the Swiss rider. Where would he fit? Well, he would basically fit in most teams, you would say, but where would he want to fit in? EF Education, Easy Post would definitely love a rider like Stefan Küng.
Yeah, he's a bit of a sort of Swiss Army knife, isn't Stefan Küng? He is super strong on all sort of terrains. Proved this year that he's a top echelon of classic riders. Rode super well in the mountains at the Tour de Suisse before getting COVID. So, I mean, he's going to be super lucrative. He's not old enough where his value is going to go down and decrease. I think he will be a hot property. As Citroën stands out as a team that would probably suit him in terms of the classic setup. They need that extra rider just to get a little bit that step above. And also in terms of helping Ben O'Connor, Aurélien Perry-Pentra and so forth in the mountains to help in that GC effort. But also, I would say Alpecin de Koning could really do with a rider like Stefan Küng, really versatile, could fit right into that Spring Classic squad. If Van der Poel's not quite feeling it, then Stefan Küng could be working with the likes of Guillaume von Kilsburg, Sylvain Dillier, and so forth on these Cobble Classics. He could fit into that team quite well, especially as they're making the move up to World Tour next year, we believe. So for King Küng, I think he's going to be spoiled with choice in this transfer market, and I'm very intrigued to see what happens to him.
So, I mean, yeah, Alpecin Phoenix, we might as well jump onto that wagon straight away, moving up to World Tour. And there's been plenty of rumors to kind of fortify the squad a bit. One of them being from the team that everyone almost seems like they want to leave, DSM. Søren Andersen, Danish rider. It was the Danish Grand Depart. He was snubbed, two-time Tour de France stage winner for the team, but wasn't in the team for the Tour de France. And Ewan, he's been linked as well as Caden Groves. And these two riders, very strong riders. What do you think of the potential of these two joining Alpecin Phoenix?
Well, this looks quite certain. These guys have been linked strongly, particularly Søren Andersen, who said he wants to leave DSM. I don't think it's quite the best relationship at the moment between him and the team, seeing he's been snubbed, also just hasn't been really getting the results. I think the morale is quite low for him at the moment, but he's making the bridge. Caden Groves from Bike Exchange. I'm a bit surprised since Caden Groves got a big result early this year in Catalonia, getting a sprint victory there. Thought the Australian was sort of clicking with this project, but of course they have the Groenewegen as well, which could make a conflict of interest for these two sprinters. Third rider there was Quinten Hermans of Intermarché. He's leaving for different reasons, was similarly snubbed for the Tour de France team, given his really strong results in 2022 so far, with a podium place at Liège, a stage win, a very strong stage win in the Tour of Belgium as well, just a couple of weeks before the Tour de France. Similar to Cavendish, wasn't really notified about his snub until it was released by the press. And I heard as well that Quinten Hermans was wanting a bigger sort of chunk out of his contract for next year, a bigger pay increase and so forth. And Intermarché couldn't quite deliver on his requests. So that seems to be Quinten Hermans moving across to Alpecin de Koning. This makes a lot of sense. Belgian going to a Belgian team. Søren Andersen would become, I mean, they have had a couple of Scandinavians in the past, but I mean, why not? I think it would work well for him in sort of getting back into the swing of becoming a breakaway wildcard.
Yeah, you're right. I completely forgot Alpecin de Koning. And of course, yeah, I didn't actually mention Quinten Hermans. But yeah, they've had Lasse Norman Hansen in the past as well. But we'll see where Søren Andersen can fit in. Quinten Hermans, I think, is such a big loss. But they kind of are getting behind the Bini Girmay project a bit more, you would say. But yeah, moving on, Ewan, you might as well just let us know what's going on in the French corner.
Well, in terms of French riders, well, there's quite a few changes happening. As always, some people dancing with the devil, moving across to the other French pro-continental team, and a couple of riders making some quite brave moves. Clément Champoussin, according to L'Equipe, is moving across to Arkea Samsic for next year after what has been quite a successful time with AG2R Citroën. In terms of Lilian Calmejane, he is deciding to move over to Intermarché for next year, we believe, which is, I mean, similarly, another surprising move from AG2R Citroën, but he hasn't quite clicked into that setup ever since he left from Total. Speaking of Total, Stef Küng, super promising Belgian rider in his youth, not quite delivered as a senior. He is moving across to Total Energy for the next year. Also looking at some key renewals in French corner. We also have Guillaume Martin, who is extended for 2 years at Cofidis. David Gaudu has extended with Groupama Française des Jeux. And Luca Mozzato, he's not French, but he rides for the Breton B&B project. He has extended for a long time, which is surprising since he's young, breaking through a number of top 10s in this Tour de France, looking quite strong. He is sticking with B&B Hotels in the long term, as B&B Hotels, they declared in the French press that they want to become World Tour by 2025. So maybe he's part of this big World Tour project for B&B Hotels, but Mozzato will be hanging on with them for a while.
Speaking of Italian sprinters, Andrea Pasqualone is rumored to be going to Bahrain Victorious. Bahrain Victorious, of course, also losing Doman Novak to UAE Team Emirates. And Ewan, do you think this is a good signing by Bahrain Victorious in terms of getting the Italian in? And is it a shame that we're seeing Doman Novak going out the door?
Yes, according to Seol, the Slovenian news outlets, Domen Novak is rumored, and highly rumored, pretty much quasi-signed now over to UAE for next year, leaving Bahrain behind to join Pogačar, Jan Polans, and the Slovenian management over at UAE to help Pogačar in his Grand Tour endeavors. I think this is a really good move. Domen Novak's been really strong over the past couple of years. I think he's been a bit of an unsung hero until this year's Giro when people sort of, they finally got to know the name of Domen Novak, but he's been there for a number of years at Bahrain, chipping away, helping other riders. He was former Slovenian road race champion, finished third place this year at the Tour of Slovenia. And I'm glad to see Domen now move over to UAE. It seemed like at the Tour of Slovenia that he was finally competing as a team leader, even if the team had some strange interdynamics there. But as a helper for Pogačar, I think he's really gonna deliver.
So anyways, that's basically it for the rumors, the transfers. But we're gonna do our segment that we actually did last year for some of them, and it's called Transfer Spotlight, where we want to see kind of one rider in particular go onto the World Tour who's done fairly well on the lower divisions. And the rider that I'm going to flag up is actually someone who's been on the channel before, Andreas Stockport. Of course, he's going to be Danish. Andreas Stockport, who has been on the World Tour before. He signed in 2020 with NTT Pro Cycling. We all know what happened in that year. So it wasn't the greatest year to start as a neo-pro, but he also still had a year with Team Quebec and Nextash. And then unfortunately he had to drop down to the Norwegian Team Co-op. But this year he's had plenty of good results. He won the very prestigious one-day race, GP Herning in Denmark, where he actually beat the former world champion Mads Pedersen to the victory. He's had plenty of top results in various different races. And in the last race he was in the Danish National Championships, which is seen as one of the hardest races to win in the world because of the lack of teammates and the incredible amount of World Tour riders we have, he actually finished fourth. So Andreas Stockport, I think, could definitely be a good asset to plenty of teams once again on the World Tour, but we'll have to wait and see. So, Ewan, what do you think of Stockport? Which team do you think he could suit into?
I think it's suited Uno X. I'm not necessarily convinced he'll make it up to World Tour next year, purely because he's 25. Yes, he was in the World Tour before, but we've seen plenty of guys just not crack the World Tour. He didn't get many World Tour results and sort of stay in this second echelon of riding. Lassano and Hansen had a very similar trajectory as well, where he never quite cracked the World Tour ever again. And I think Andreas Stockport, as bad as it sounds, might be in that category, but I wish him all the best. Where would he go? Who would want an Andreas Stockport type in an English-speaking project? It's hard to tell. EF, maybe.
I definitely think he would fit into Uno X, and Uno X has World Tour aspirations, so that could definitely work, but who knows? So anyways, that's basically it here on the second rest day of the Tour de France officially. And make sure to check out the podcast if you haven't already. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you for doing so. And of course, comment down below what you thought of the transfers that we talked about, and if there's anyone that we missed out as well. Subscribe to the channel. And as always, thank you very much for watching and have a nice day.